With the next Sonic movie not releasing until 2027, my immediate excitement has shifted towards the new Superman movie from James Gunn, because it seems like a return to form for the character. The past decade, Hollywood has been hyper-focused on depictions of Superman-esque characters who show what power with no restraint looks like, or even depictions of Superman who are darker and more brooding, diverging away from that bright symbol of hope and a better tomorrow that Superman has long stood for. So, with all of this excitement around the film, my feed has been flooded with Superman trailer reactions and theories, and just the other day, I came across a video that really stuck out to me, and I kind of wanted to take some time to respond to it. The title is "James Gunn's Superman is a Man-Child? Probably." And while I was watching through the video, the creator had some interesting arguments that I personally thought fell flat. Now, I want to preface this by acknowledging that this is just their opinion on the trailers, just like I'll be sharing my own thoughts and opinions, so it's important to stay respectful even if you disagree with her thoughts or mine, as at the end of the day, it's just a movie and nothing truly important. But I do find it interesting that so many people are hypercritical of this film and interpretation of Superman despite not much being out about it yet, and I think it kind of goes to show how iconic and beloved the character of Superman is. So with all of that being said, let's listen to what Jester Bell has to say about the newest Superman trailer.
So to start off, let's watch a little bit of this clip right here from Justice League Unlimited.
You remember what happened to your reputation when you were under Darkseid's control.
That was years ago.
People haven't forgotten the way you and the League have been acting lately. Look, I'm a reporter, not a public relations person, but with all the muscle you guys throw around, you're starting to scare me.
We got a lot of power, but we only use it to help.
Like when you and Captain Marvel wrecked Lexor City on national television?
We come on a little strong sometimes, but it's for the people's own good.
Now, this clip is actually very similar to this clip from James Gunn's Superman.
Recently, you've come under a lot of fire for what some might. It's a lot. Today, the Secretary of Defense said he was going to look into your action. That's funny.
This is how you're going to be?
I'm not the one being interviewed. You consult with the president.
No. I wasn't representing anybody except for me.
The setup is very similar. It's that Superman and Lois are just supposed to be spending some time together, and Superman, in the midst of all of that, is under fire for his decision-making using his power. He's under fire from the public, under fire from the government, and in both scenes, Lois Lane is pushing the questions against Superman about exactly what he is doing and if it's the right thing. But you'll notice that Superman's demeanor is quite different in both clips. One in Justice League Limited, Superman is very firm in his stance on what he is doing. He does get a little bit hot under the collar, as you can see from this little animation of being questioned here, and you can tell that the frustration of everything that is happening to him is really brimming up, but he sort of stays with this maturity, that he has thought through his decisions, and that he wants to stay true to them. He is confident that he has made the right choices, even if a lot of people are lobbying against him right now. Now, Superman is a bit in the wrong in the video that we are seeing, the Justice League Unlimited clip. As we see during the show, he's kind of lost his way a little bit. He's kind of become too self-righteous, too assured of what he's doing here, and he goes on an arc in the show regarding that. But it is still a completely different demeanor from this in Superman, in the other clip, where Superman immediately gets very upset, loses his cool, and starts acting much more emotional.
The premise of Jester Bell's argument stems from the scene in the trailer where Clark agrees to let Lois Lane interview him as Superman. She compares it to a clip from Justice League Unlimited where Lois presses Clark about his image recently and how the public is beginning to lose trust. Using this comparison of clips, she tries to demonstrate that Superman is a stoic character who constantly has his emotions in check, exemplifying that he is an emotionally mature hero. And I'd agree that Superman is a very mature character in most depictions. However, Superman is still a deeply emotional character. What's interesting about Superman is that despite being Kryptonian, Clark is often the most human of DC heroes. He's a character who wears his heart on his sleeve, and oftentimes that gets him in trouble. So let's take a look at the end of the conversation between Lois and Clark that she played, because she cut a scene out at the end, and Superman gets rather emotional when Lois states that one of his answers makes him sound like Lex Luthor.
That sounds like something Lex would say.
Don't even joke about that. I'm nothing like Lex Luthor.
And if we take a moment to look at the full context behind why Superman is under fire from the public in Justice League Unlimited, we can find that it's due to his emotions getting the better of him. Superman knows that Lex Luthor is plotting something which makes him uneasy, and by getting emotional about the situation, he ends up falling right into the hands of Amanda Waller and Lex Luthor's scheme. Instead of being more rational when Captain Marvel arrives on the scene, he ends up attacking his own ally and destroying a city in the process. Of course, Superman is right in the long run, and Lex is still a pretty bad person who hasn't changed. However, if Superman had kept his emotions in check, he wouldn't have fallen victim to Amanda Waller and Lex Luthor's scheme.
Everyone has their own perceptions of who Clark Kent and Superman should be, and that is why we get into so many arguments. For me, though, the consistent trait amongst Superman portrayals I get from him is that there's a maturity to him, a wisdom, and a conviction from him. Not that he is perfect, certainly not. We just talked about in that clip, he had lost his way a little bit. He had become a little too self-assured of himself in that clip. But in terms of the kind of traits that I don't think are Superman's flaws, is I don't think that he is super insecure. I don't think that he is childish in any way.
I agree with her point that everyone has their own take on who Superman should be and what he stands for, to a degree. She starts off by saying that, for her, a consistent trait is that Superman has a sense of maturity, wisdom, and conviction, which are things that I would agree with. However, what she follows up with is where I would begin to slightly disagree. She notes that Superman shouldn't be insecure or childish in any way, shape, or form, and I think that is a take which is lacking any form of nuance. From the extended clip I played earlier, Superman does have insecurities. He didn't like being labeled similar to Lex Luthor. Superman is a morally just character, where Lex is the antithesis of that, and being labeled as such really bothers Clark. It's been depicted time and again that if the public begins to turn against Superman, he does feel conviction to make things right, even if it's an insecure or unwise decision. A clear example of this is when Superman orders the League to turn themselves in when the Watchtower fires on Cadmus. It was a very emotional and insecure decision by Superman, to which Batman replies,
"This is the single dumbest plan I've ever heard. If you're feeling guilty, clear your own name. Don't stand on the sidelines waiting for somebody else to do it."
As for Superman not being childish in any way, let's take a look at how Superman acts when at home with his family for the holidays.
This little guy was crazy for Christmas. We used to wrap his presents in lead foil so he couldn't peek.
You mean Santa wrapped them?
Oh, of course, dear.
Lead.
If Superman was to be questioned by Lois, even if he was under a lot of pressure, a lot of people coming after him, the government, public, and they were in this conversation, I feel like if Lois Lane is starting to push the hard questions, Superman would be more like, "Lois, what are you doing?" And then if Lois continued to press him, I think that he would, cross his arms and be like, "I know that a lot of people have a problem with how I handled this here, but I had to in order to save lives." I think that Superman would be a lot more mature, a lot more solid in his conviction, even if he didn't like being questioned. And even if this branched out into a huge conversation about that, which apparently it does in the movie. I think that even with Superman's frustrations, there would still be a maturity to him. And he's not teenage Superman here. He is grown Superman who is established in this universe. But instead, what we get from David Corenswet's Clark Kent is that he immediately goes on the defensive mode. Not even when Lois has opened her mouth, like she says, "You've been coming under a lot of fire lately," and he's like, "Oh, no." Like he immediately has to try to stop her from questioning him. He immediately has to shut it down, and then she has to calm him down to get back to the questions. And then it continues on, and it just becomes more and more emotional from him. Like he's super insecure about his decision making, and so even getting this from Lois, he constantly goes on the defensive mode, but he himself is not confident in his decision making. What I'm getting at here is that I think that Superman is a character with a lot more wisdom and maturity than this. Like I said, I think that he would be a lot more measured in his response to Lois, even if it was frustrating him a bit.
She states that Superman would handle things in a calm demeanor when responding to Lois and her questions, but context and having a deeper understanding of Superman and Lois Lane's characters are pretty important here. Superman is a character who doesn't get caught up in the world of politics, and he knows the folly of involving oneself in bureaucracies. He knows the value of life is something sacred, and that's all he wants to protect. Whereas Lois during this is excited to get the full scoop from Superman, and she wants to ask some hard-hitting questions. This is really in line with her character since she loves journalism. But it's evident that Superman is put a bit off guard by someone whom he loves and trusts deeply, pushing a political angle when all he cares about is preventing the loss of life. In my opinion, this doesn't come across as Superman being insecure in his decision making, but rather being frustrated and probably feeling misunderstood since he doesn't care about the politics of the world, only about the lives saved, and if that's not heroic, I'm not sure what is.
Like, it's a completely different demeanor for characters. One is more grown up, one is more mature, one is more masculine. The other is more childish. And that is what I feel with James Gunn's Superman so far. Now, before you all come at me, you could be saying, this is a scene taken out of context from a much longer scene. They could have taken these moments and it won't seem so bad all put together. I don't agree at this point. I don't think that Superman would be sounding like this, getting so upset at being questioned. I'm not getting Superman from it.
Back to the maturity and emotions of Superman, she keeps showing the DCAU Superman as this paragon of emotional stability and masculinity, which to a degree he is, but Superman still has his flaws, and he definitely has his emotional outbursts in this show. So let's look at a few examples. Superman's emotions led him to try and battle Darkseid to the death, and when Batman came to save him, he slams Bruce into the wall, injuring his arm. This shows how he got caught up in his emotions, and his anger got the best of him. At the end of this episode, he ends up scolding Bruce for saving his life, knowing that Darkseid may have survived. And if we look at another example, after traveling through time fighting Vandal Savage in order to restore the time stream, Superman has a very emotional reaction to reuniting with his friend Batman, and no one else on the Justice League has a similar reaction, showing how emotional Superman can be when it comes to his friends.
Also, I want to say, for the rest of what we've seen from Superman so far, it's a little bit more of the same, where it's kind of like they're playing up the goofy aspects a lot, and I don't have a problem with doing a goofy Superman movie. The Christopher Reeve Superman movie was goofy. There's that callback to the Golden Age, but it doesn't feel like Golden Age superhero comic book goofiness. It feels like James Gunn's goofiness. I think, and I'm gonna get shot in the face for saying this, so far, I feel like Superman might be leaning more towards another man-child character. I know I'm gonna get shot, but listen, James Gunn, specialty is man-children in his movies. All of the male characters, with the exception of, I suppose, Groot, well, not even that, they are more of man-children characters. They're very immature male characters. So is Peacemaker. These are the kinds of characters that Gunn has gravitated towards. And I'm not saying at all that you can't do male characters who are super immature. Like, that's the entire point of the Guardians of the Galaxy and Peacemaker and pretty much every character that James Gunn has done. There's a marked immaturity to them, and that's what has worked for him. But this is my fear of what is happening with Superman, is that James Gunn is incapable of doing anything else. So when he's doing Superman, a character that, by the way, I covered this, he originally said the reason he didn't want to do Superman is he wasn't interested in him, and then he found a way in. He found a way to relate himself to the character. I'm worried that James Gunn's way of relating to Superman is to turn him into one of his characters, his more childish characters. And that is what I'm afraid of seeing this movie. And it's like, of course, I've already talked about before, and I'm just really tired of it. So many characters in movies, so many male characters go to like the man-child trope or the simpering trope or stuff like that. There are not a lot of masculine characters in today's movies, not the mainstream blockbusters at least. So when I say that, I think the traits of Superman is there's a wisdom to him, there's a maturity, and something that everyone can learn from, right? He's very measured in his decision-making and the way he talks to people and all of that. Even in the goofier portrayals, like Lois and Clark on TV, there was that as well. I don't see him as at all overly emotional or childish or immature or insecure at all. I don't think that those are his flaws. But it's like, I ask for Superman to be a more masculine character in a positive sense, and it's like, are we really going to get that today? And if we are going to get that, are we going to get that from James Gunn, who has only ever done immature characters? And might I add, James Gunn is a very immature man himself. So the answer, I think, is perhaps no.
Now, to her point about James Gunn making goofier characters and that being a legitimate worry for her, I can totally understand. It's something that he tends to lean into when it comes to his character writing. However, I haven't seen any evidence in the trailers that would suggest that Superman is going to be a character that is, quippy and goofy like Star-Lord or crass like Peacemaker. However, I think that this is something totally reasonable to have concerns about. My whole issue, I guess you could say, is that it seems like she's expecting Superman to be this wise, sage-like character, almost akin to Yoda or Mr. Miyagi. However, Superman is supposed to be flawed. His virtue is what's to be admired, but Superman as a character is compelling because he faces the flaws of the everyman and overcomes them without ditching his morals. He faces fear, regret, and self-doubt, but in those moments of weakness, he finds a way to overcome it. The thing that's inspiring about Superman is not his powers, but his heart. Overall, I think there are some interesting points that she brought attention towards, even if I disagree wholeheartedly. However, at the end of the day, we'll have to wait and see. It could be another Hollywood bomb, but I'm holding out hope that this movie will bring something special to the table. I've linked Jester Bell's video if you're interested in checking out her channel, but remember to be kind because at the end of the day, it's fun to have these discussions and trade differing opinions as long as everyone remains respectful. If you're not subscribed to my main channel, go on over and check it out. The link is down below. If you liked this video, I have an upcoming video on my main channel breaking down why the virtuous hero is so important. As always, I wish you all the best. Take care. Peace.